Deion Sanders might be taking his coaching talents to the Sunshine State. How would that affect Florida, Florida State, and the Miami Hurricanes in recruiting?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So reports emerged on Tuesday that Deion Sanders, who's doing a heck of a job at Jackson State, just led them to their first 11-0 undefeated regular season in history. We know the kind of noise he's been making in recruiting. He's now being linked to potentially becoming the new head coach at either Colorado or USF. And I threw it out there on Locked On Canes Twitter. If Coach Prime were to end up at USF, which of course isn't a Power 5 school, but still we know his reputation as a recruiter. If he were to wind up at USF, would you be concerned about Deion competing with Miami for a lot of the same recruits? Many of you said no, you're not concerned because it's USF. Some of you said, yeah, you're a little bit concerned. And so I thought, who better to ask about this than Larry Blustein, our boy Blue, because nobody talks to more high school players and coaches than Larry Blustein. I mean, Blue, if Deion were, and it's interesting because Colorado is a Power 5 job, USF is not. I still kind of feel like if the money's similar, I feel like Deion would probably prefer to be in South Florida just because of, the proximity to so many great high school players. What do you think is the better job for him?
Yeah, well, and happy holidays to you. And first of all, well, you know what? He grew up hour and a half south in North Fort Myers and knows the area pretty well. And certainly a city the size of Tampa would be appealing to him. But I don't think he's gonna. I don't think it would hurt. If they ever went up against it, I'd be worried more about UCF than I would US.
Yeah.
UCF's in the Big 12. Orlando's a great place to be. It's it's exciting, and obviously, and not that Tampa's not. It's just that that makes a whole difference. And it's funny that you bring that up. I was talking on my radio show this week to somebody who from USF, and we were talking about the change and how this is the last year they're going to be playing UCF for till 2027. And the fact that they're going to be playing a lot of their conference foes, which are not going to be Houston, they're not going to be USF, they're not going to be Memphis, and they're not going to be Cincinnati. So I think he's going to get who he's going to get. Obviously he's a name and he's doing real well, but at the HBCU level, he gets to push history. He gets to push the fact that a lot of the Black Americans, they've lost touch with the history, of the race, and having an opportunity to come play at Jackson State or any of the schools, Florida A&M or wherever, gives them a closer touch to the past and to the understanding of what their heritage is. USF, not so much. I mean, you could sell that. Really, I mean, I could see how he's selling it at Jackson State, and I could see how he would sell it in that form. But what are you going to sell? I mean, you don't have an on-campus facility. You're building one, but it's not going to be what Gainesville is, what the FSU is, and he's going to get kids. He's going to get comebacks. He's going to get kids who will leave and go to Auburn or Wisconsin and that are disgruntled and they come back. No different than Willie Taggart or Charlie Strong or Jim Levitt or anybody that's been there. USF is what it is. And certainly right now they're an AAC team. whose conference foes include Florida Atlantic. So, telling everybody that, oh, yeah, well, outside the conference we'll play Alabama and Florida, which is nice, but they could do that now. But he's not going to be able to sell any more other than a on-campus stadium that they're building, which is going to be 35. It's going to be a lot like SMU or Houston. So to answer your question in that roundabout way, no, I don't think it's really going to affect anybody in the state as far as the Power 5 teams.
So it's kind of similar the way you describe it is sort of what Lane Kiffin was at FAU, where it's like it's not like he was taking a lot of kids that would have been going to Miami or Florida State or Florida, but did about as well as FAU could do with their ceiling.
Definitely. And by having kids that, especially in this stage of the transfer portal, there's kids who just want to get out of UCLA. There's kids who just want to get out of Oklahoma because of the fact that they made a mistake and they went there and didn't realize there were 4 other offensive tackles or there was 5 other defensive backs that are ahead of them. And they just want to play the game because there's a lot of people that understand that, that the NFL is going to be there, and it doesn't matter if you come from, Rolling Rock or you come from, wherever you come from. But that's a thing. And obviously, like I said, Tampa's a lure. It's a great place to be. It's a big city, and and especially where USF's located, it's like UCF. They're both on the outskirts of town. So they're not inundated with that daily hustle bustle of a community that's over 1 million. So they're both. I mean, it's definitely a lure, but you're not going to take somebody that's going to go to Ohio State and you have an opportunity to play, and then say, well, USF, and they're not good. Yeah, it's just not a logical thing. Now, again, while people are screaming at their screens right now, so well, he did it at Jackson State. If you heard what I said. Whole different level when you're selling
it's a different selling point.
Exactly. You're selling
you're selling history and heritage versus just USF. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Larry Blustein joins us, AM 560 Sports WQAM in South Florida. I want to get to shortly. We're going to get to Blues kind of predictions and picks for Miami's season finale this weekend against Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, I can't say regular season finale. Well, maybe because they could still get to a bowl game. No ACC championship game in the cards for the Canes. But before we get to that, Blue, interesting. Players we're looking at in the transfer portal. A pretty big name, at least used to be a big name, that hit the portal is Alabama running back Trey Sanders. In 2019, he was the top running back in the country in that class, former IMG Academy product. This one's interesting to me. Obviously, there's a reason why he's leaving Bama. He has been snake bit by injuries and a serious car accident. So he's, not unfortunately had a stable enough health situation to really get on the field there and make a difference. So he's looking for opportunities elsewhere. Obviously, when it comes to Miami, there's a budding connection with IMG Academy, his alma mater. Do you think Miami needs running backs? So do you think there could end up being mutual interest there?
Yeah, good point. I remember him coming out of IMG. He was one of those very few that actually started back in the 10th grade there. Usually you don't go there till, your junior year, at least your senior year, most likely, because everyone transfers there, for their final season. And I always thought, wow, what a stud, a big time kid. But as you said, a lot of wear and tear on his body. Reminds me a lot of Bo Scarborough, who came out of the same school, IMG, Alabama, never really became that stud. He was a running back and he started at times, but yeah, it's a shame. I don't know if Miami really needs that. I mean, Miami, the fans are already disgruntled on what they have as far as, some of the guys that aren't performing. You don't want to have a guy who's kind of an iffy type of guy. If you're going to strike gold, you're going to strike it with Mark Fletcher, or you're going to strike it with somebody like that. I don't think there's anybody out there. And if they're looking for depth and maybe a stopgap type of guy and he's healthy, yes, but not as a guy who's going to be the marquee back. I just don't think he's of that status anymore. And I mean, if he was, he'd still be at Alabama.
Do you think he might end up in like a kind of a smaller program to try and get playing time somewhere and sort of just kind of I don't know, rehabilitate his stock?
Yeah, I mean, if Prime doesn't take the USF job, maybe you go to Jackson State.
Yeah, there you go. Or maybe he goes to USF if Prime does take that job.
Okay, all right, that's a good thing because
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, yeah, that would be more of the line right there. Maybe a USF, somebody who, even you don't see him at an FSU, you don't see him at a Florida, especially because Florida's trying to get some and UCF is loaded. I mean, they just had the kid who transferred from Clemson who went to Florida to UCF, and so they have a Backman. So you have an opportunity there. He's not a Power 5 back anymore. Just not right now. I mean, there's too much baggage. And again, like I said, if he was, he wouldn't be leaving Alabama.
Miami Hurricanes have an opportunity to end their season on a high note. Night game home against Pittsburgh. I'll give you one prediction on something I do expect to see, or someone I expect to see on the field this weekend. I want to pick Blue's brain on this as well. So keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have the access to the best qualified candidates. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Guys, I have gotten jobs through LinkedIn Jobs before. It's so great. You post your job. If you're a small business owner, you're hiring, then you add your job in the purple hiring hashtag frame to your LinkedIn profile. Spread the word that you're hiring. People will see it, believe me. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Alex Donno here on Locked On Canes, joined by our good pal, our boy Blue, Larry Blustein. So, Blue, I feel pretty confident based on things I've seen and heard over these past few days. I think Tyler Van Dyke is going to start this week. I know for a fact he wants to start this week. So anybody thinking, maybe he just wants to shut it down for the year, he wants to start. In fact, I think if he's not ready to start, someone's going to have to protect him from himself because he wants to play this week. And I expect TVD to play. Obviously, I can't guarantee if he's going to be, the same TVD that he was, against North Carolina and, parts of that Virginia Tech game. But I'm expecting him to play. And Blue, how much of a chance do you give Miami against a good Pitt team if he doesn't play?
Yeah. Well, it's going to be tough, obviously, an uphill climb. I mean, if you've watched the season, it's sort of like it's good to think every single week is a different week. I mean, it's you get pumped up, but and especially in the ACC and our good friend Jazz Santana and I talked about this very thing. The ACC is so crazy that Georgia Tech, which Miami manhandled, beat both North Carolina and Duke. I mean, it doesn't make sense. But if you're speaking in reality, he gives them by far the best chance to win. Certainly, Pitt's a really good football team. They run real well, defensive-oriented team, obviously, because their head coach is a defensive guy in Narduzzi. Win, lose, or draw, and this is something that I strongly believe, he's coming back. Whether it's with Miami or goes into the transfer portal, which I don't see because I still think, as good as Garcia and as good as Ja'Cory Brown have been, they're not him. I mean, he gives you a chance to win at an elite level. They give you a chance to win with people around them. Obviously, with a great running game and good offensive linemen and playmaking receivers. But I think that somebody like Tyler Van Dyke gives you an opportunity to win every game, no matter who it was. And and I don't know who he listens to, or he's barely played one season. in his career. Barely played. Of all the times that he's been in, he's barely played with his injuries and such. I think that if he's a smart guy and understands that his stock could soar, because we were talking last year at this very last game of the season, say, oh, geez, next year is it for him. He's going to be probably a first-round draft pick, maybe the 4th, 5th best quarterback. Not so much now. He just hasn't had enough for everybody to go on, especially this season. And I think that I'd like to see him in the game this week. But if he doesn't, he's going to be back. I mean, he just is going to be back.
I agree with you. I think he's going to be back at Miami. I'm a lot more confident in that now than I was even a couple weeks ago. And I also, Blue, from what I understand, and I think this is great. I think Ja'Carri Brown is totally fine working under Tyler again next year. Like I think, because he's gotten a little bit of a taste now of being a starting quarterback. Went very well against Georgia Tech, not well against Clemson, but he's young. He's going to go through his lumps. Ja'Carri is not thinking right now, to my understanding, that, you know what, I better be a starter here or somewhere else next year. I think he's perfectly happy learning under. I think Jake's going to be gone. I don't expect Jake back next year, but I think Ja'Carri and Tyler both will be.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree, and he isn't ready, and he will be the year after. He's going to be more mature, and I think next year what's going to happen. I know the schedule's really tough for next year, with some pretty decent teams coming in, into Hard Rock, but and the ACC is always a tough, deal. But I think what's going to happen, you're going to see whether it's Miami of Ohio in the first game or some of the games along the way. You're going to see Brown become that guy that's going to get some playing time every single game, I think. I think he's going to be inserted, if they're ahead or if they, kind of a change of pace thing and they want to run. So, he's guaranteed to if he stays, to get a lot of reps. He's not going to get the reps that he would as a starter. But like you said, he's got to understand. He's got to understand that his value to the team, especially with TBD back, is to be the guy who's always going to be ready and is going to be sharp and, learn and keep learning. And, that's why you look at like somebody like a Coach Frank Ponce, and who keeps, whether people want to knock Gattis or not, Gattis has the experience. He's been around all offenses, and whatever he does, I'm sure Frank's watching him in that same way. So when and if he does take another job, whether it's after this season, after next season, that Frank will be ready. In the same token, I think Brown understands that he'll have 2 full years after Van Dyke leaves to showcase his skills and hone his abilities, and he may emerge as a better quarterback prospect than all these guys because of what he could do as far as a runner and his strong arm. All he needs to do is, I think, learn how to make better decisions, and then that comes with his experience. But I expect if like I said, to answer your question again in a roundabout way, if Tyler's healthy this week, he plays. If not, then Miami chalks it up and, goes ahead and do what they've been doing the last couple of weeks.
In a moment, I'm going to ask Blue the $1 million question, and I'd like you guys to weigh in on this as well at Locked On Canes. You can tweet us at Locked On Canes. If you follow us there, we will follow you back. Is Josh Gattis on the hot seat? Because there are people trying to read between the lines on that one. So I want to get into that right after we talk about the awesome folks at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur sport out there, from football to basketball to soccer. We're watching all those games right now. Esports, we've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're going to help you guys win. We are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So here are some of the clues, Blue, people are reading. And I think people are reading a little bit too much into some of these, to be honest. So Mario Cristobal on Monday was asked about Josh Gattis. And he said this: you don't share certain things out in public. You always try to work things out within the walls of the program. We have done a really good job of hiring coaches that have had tremendous success in every place they've been at. We have had offensive struggles, but we'll put that on all of us. So some people are saying, well, he didn't endorse him. That means they're talking about getting rid. And listen, maybe that's the case, but Blue, the more I cover Mario, the more I kind of understand the way he operates with the media. I don't think he wanted to say a whole lot about Gattis or any other coach, because you've got another game coming up this weekend. And if you start going into specifics of evaluating coaches, then you open up Pandora's box where they can start asking you about every coach. Like I think that was Mario's kind of indirect way of shutting it down. And it's not to say 100% certain Gattis is back next year, but I think people who are kind of reading the tea leaves and like, oh, you hear what Mario said? Sounds to me like Gattis isn't back. I think they're reading too much into it, because I don't think Mario's going to go into full assistant coach evaluation mode until after this coming game is over. What do you think?
Yeah, well, he deals like that with the questions like that as he does with injuries. He's never going to tell you the extent. And
right.
I think I kind of agree with you in the fact that why would he make a comment right now? He's never been the type of guy to kiss and tell, about any of this stuff. And I think that if there's a problem or there's something, I think they talk about it daily. It's not something like they're in a different building and they only see each other after the season or once every week. I'm sure they have a lot of, closed door meetings about the team, yeah. I think these fans, and, this brings me back to when the Miami needed a head coach before Mark Richt was hired. All these different rumors that went around just because people don't hear. How people who are fans or people who are gossipers, if they don't hear anything, they begin to make things up. And I think that's what's happening in this situation. They have a good relationship. He fully understands the roster that he had. Alex, come on,
And it's not just the roster's part of it, but it's also only Mario really knows how much of what Gattis is doing is what Mario actually wants him to do. Because I think people maybe don't fully realize that maybe like and there's going to have to be evaluations across the board, including self-evaluation, right? And roster evaluation, everything. And we know there's going to be a lot of roster turnover, but maybe Mario is thinking, you know what? I can't blame Gattis as much as like the message boards do, because A, I know what he has to work with because I see it every day in practice, and B, he's kind of doing what I want him to at least attempt to do. So I think that's got to be part of the evaluation as well. And it is a little strange. I know sometimes it works out this way, other times it doesn't. Mario obviously had to build his whole coaching staff pretty quickly and more or less from scratch. All the assistant coaches on offense were hired by Mario. So it's not like Gattis is even like working with his guys. They're all working with Mario guys, which maybe makes things maybe a little harder for Gattis. Maybe it doesn't, but it's definitely something to think about.
Well, first of all, you look at the quarterback situation. That's your leader. That's a guy who really makes things go. And if you don't have that guy that you worked all spring with and kind of spent probably a lot of time with, I know for a fact that TVD and Gattis and Frank Ponce were together a whole lot during the months of May and June and into July, watching film, going over scenarios, working on mechanics, different things like that. So you take that equation out, and I'm sure Jake Garcia and everybody was around, Peyton Matosha and all these guys were all there. But when you have a starter and you're preparing them and it's almost a crash course on knowing this guy, because nobody knew anybody, last year when they took this job. So I have to believe that most of this stuff is being made up and things like that. They're going to handle this. And I definitely think that when he's given an opportunity, and like you said, there's going to be a huge turnover in this roster. And it should be. You're going to get some new faces on board, and I think that these faces are going to be better than what they have now. And then next year, if we're still having this conversation, it's more valid. But I don't think after a year, especially a year where you were hampered in so many ways with your running game, your best running back out most of the time, with your quarterback limped, having with no defined receiver coming into the season. Yeah, Caleb Young started the show. Restrepo being out. I mean, there's so
Young,
much. I mean, it's just not fair to lay on one person. And everybody, Alex, is at fault in some way in some things. And, I mean, certainly go, well, if I did this, it would have been, but, it's not the overall. There's a lot of offensive and defensive coordinators in this country that they've been there a couple of years and they've been provided with some of the better players and they're still not getting it done. So there's some validity to that, but I don't think that would be valid to let somebody like that go after just one season, and a one season that really, when he wasn't really at full strength with any of the guys that he was supposed to have.
Yeah, well, now here could be another potential clue, though, and I wonder if this might even speak more loudly than whatever Mario said, okay? So for those who track recruiting, you'll notice that someone who's in the transfer portal, and this looks like a pretty exciting wide receiver. I hope he ends up at Miami. 6'6" transfer portal receiver, Andrew Armstrong from Texas A&M Commerce. He tweeted out yesterday that he's received a Miami offer and that he received it from Alonzo Highsmith. Like, do I read in? And obviously, Blue, we know Alonzo, it's part of his job is evaluating talent.
Sure.
Like, he's the GM of football operations and he's studying film and studying players. But people are pointing out that, okay, so Armstrong, a wide receiver, he doesn't receive his offer from the wide receivers coach, which is Josh Gattis, who's the offensive coordinator. He gets his offer from Alonzo Highsmith. Might that be a sign that maybe Gattis is on the way out if we've got Highsmith giving out offers to receivers?
Well, here's the thing too. What is Highsmith's job if it's not to improve this team?
Right.
Is he just going to be a figurehead? Is he going to be like the guy from the Bad News Bears that just waves to everybody and kind of makes everybody think he's part of the team? He is part of the team. And if the offer does come from him, because remember, he grew up, after his days here at Miami in the Houston area. His son went to high school there. He knows the area. He knows the people. He has a lot of contacts. And other than, and I'm sure that everybody would love to have a signature guy like him give you an offer. Why would Coach Gattis, if he has no idea about this guy, or never seen him? Right. Maybe, like you said, Alonzo has a lot of people out in Texas that he knows and he's close, like Bubba McDowell, who's coaching out there. And you got to figure that somebody's in his ear at all times and say, go, listen, why don't you come out and see this guy? Or why don't you check his film out? And then all of a sudden you read a Gattis offered him and somebody says, well, did you ever see him play or everything? And Gattis says, no. What kind of validity would there be there? So at least it's got to come. But here's the thing too. How many guys, there's a lot of receivers from around the country. Let's say somebody like, I don't know, like Charlie Strong's recruiting somebody in, I don't know, Georgia, and certainly watches a kid and he happens to be a receiver and has said, takes him back. And I'm sure that Alonzo just didn't say, you know what? Okay, thanks. And then call the kid up and offer him. I'm sure they sat down with Gattis and Mario and watch the film and then say, you know what, let's pull the trigger. I know his coach or I know his uncle or I know somebody and I'll be more than happy to extend the offer. And they go, yeah, it'd be great coming from you because of the fact that look who you are. And the validity is you're from out that area. So no, it's another rouge that everybody's looking for. It's another something that people are making a big deal out of. So I'll say no. I don't think that has anything to do with Gattis.
I feel like we're debunking myths left and right. I love this. Larry Blustein, you do an awesome job keeping me grounded, keeping all of us grounded. Check him out on Twitter at Larry Blustein. Check out his shows on AM 560 Sports WQAM. When is next week's show scheduled for, Blue?
Finally, we're home 6 to 8 on Monday. Awesome. After the last couple of weeks being on Tuesday, late night shows and stuff like that. But it's important. Last night was our Thanksgiving show where all of our guests were asked, as we always do, what's that one thing that you have to have on the Thanksgiving table, whether it be a starter, a main dish, or a side
What's
dish.
yours, by the way? Because I've given you mine, and it's my favorite traditional Thanksgiving dish. I love stuffing or dressing, depending on which. I'll eat them both. So what's your favorite?
Well, 5 out of the 7 guests agree with you last night. All of them were looking forward to stuffing. To me, I love whipped potatoes with roasted garlic in it. We kind of squeeze the roasted garlic in it, put a little Parmesan cheese, and instead of milk to make it too rich, I use some chicken stock, and it really gives a good flavor. And yeah, that's pretty much my go-to, as far as that. But isn't it crazy, overwhelming with your that 6 of 8 people that were polled, and they all said stuffing. Right. They love that stuffing.
6 of 8 people can't be wrong, right? But the whipped potatoes sound good as well. Well, Blue, you're making me hungry, so let's get on out of here. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you guys again. I might try and do something for tomorrow, even on Thanksgiving Day. If I can put something out, I will. Otherwise, Friday, we're going to be here. Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.